In this section, I'm going to start the discussion about protocol authentication, and I'm going to talk about RIP, EIGRP, and ospf authentication. Now, ospf authentication is the simplest, so I'm going to talk about this first, and because my network is configured with ospf already, this is not going to take any time for me. So, first of all, let's see the authentication in ospf. You should know that ospf has three types of authentication. The first type of authentication is type 0, and in type 0 you are not using authentication at all, but what it is called in ospf jargon, it is null authentication, that you are using authentication but you are not using any key or any password for that. In the type 1 authentication, you are using authentication but you are sending the password in simple text. And of course, anybody can get into middle and capture the password and start its own router and create neighborship with other routers and get anything that it wants. So the third authentication, that is authentication type 2, is here as MD5 authentication. And this is the strongest type of authentication that you have available in ospf. And the second thing that you should know is you can enable authentication in two levels. First, you can authentication it in their interface configuration, or you can enable it under router configuration for a specific area. So you can have area authentication or interface authentication. If you enable authentication on a specific area, all interfaces that are in that area should provide the password. And I'm going to show it to you right now. First of all, let's enable authentication between router 1 and router 2's interface. To do this, I go to router 1 and I go to privilege mode and configuration mode. Now I have interface path 00. That is an interface that has neighborship with router 2. Let's check the neighborship first. So show IP ospf interfaces brief, and I'm going to use interfaces because I'm interested in path 00 and see that we have one neighbor on this link. So I add this. I have two commands. First of all, let's see one command. To show IP ospf interface fast00 will tell me if any authentication is available here. And you can see that nothing is here about authentication. That means I am using null authentication in this interface. So I need two commands to enable authentication. First of all, I tell this interface to do the authentication. For simple authentication, I use IP ospf authentication command and hit enter. And this will tell this interface to do the authentication. Now that I am doing the authentication, I should provide a password for this. So I use IP ospf authentication key. And you can see that now I have two options here. If I enter 0, that means this is the key that I am entering right now. If I enter 7, it says that I have an encrypted key previously, and I am entering this here. I have no idea what the password is, but this is the encryption of that password. I'm not going to use any of them. 0 is default. So I hit, for example, I type in Cisco, and you can see that before entering this command, the neighborship is going down because I enabled authentication previously, but I didn't enable it on router 2. So I type in the key here, and now I have two commands for authentication. Let's check the commands. To show run interface fast00 will tell me that I have enabled authentication and I have entered the key. I'm going to copy these commands and put them under router 2's interface. Enable, configure terminal, and interface fast00. And now insert these commands here. And now you can see that the neighborship is created again because I have authentication available here. Now let's see the result of show IP ospf interface fast00 command, and now you can see that we have simple password authentication enabled here. Let's disable these commands. I'm going to use a notepad script and paste these commands here. Oh no. Let's go to other one and copy these commands. And of course I can put these commands here and add a no to them. I go to router 2 and do the same here. No. And another no here, and now I have disabled the authentication. Now I am going to use the MD5 authentication, that is hardware authentication here. I need to add again a command to enable authentication and a second command to give the key to this authentication type. I use IP ospf. Now instead of typing authentication, I type message digest key. And you can see that message digest key gives the key to my, ospf process. Now I can use any number of keys, and I'm numbering the key number 1. Next, I should tell that I'm going to use MD5 authentication, and next I can enter the password. I type in Cisco here. Now I should enable authentication. I have given the key to this interface. I use IP ospf authentication, and now press space and say that I am using message digest type here, and you can see that null is here. So I hit enter. Now I have two commands that in running config I can copy them. You can see that I have IP ospf authentication enabled in message digest type, and the message digest key is Cisco. So I copy these and go to router 2 and use them under fast00. And now you can see that I am neighbor and I have neighborship enabled. So if I try to see the IP ospf interface fast00 commands result, I can see that I have message digest authentication enabled, and I am using key number 1. So I have this enabled. Now I have another type of authentication available here. I can go to a specific area and tell that any interface in this area should have authentication enabled. Now I go to router 1 and copy these commands, and again negate them using the no, and here another no and another no, and now I have removed the authentication from these interfaces. I am going to enable authentication in area 0 for router 1 and router 2. To do this, I go to router 1's router process, router ospf 1 process, hit enter, and type in area 0. And if I want to have authentication enabled, I type in authentication. And if I want to have message digest authentication enabled, I type in authentication message digest. And because I'm going to have the strongest type of authentication, I type in message digest. Now that I have entered this command, any interface in area 0 should provide the password for me. So I type in, I copy this command because this command is the command that is used under the interface configuration. Now I should check which interfaces are under area 0. So I type in to show IP ospf interface in brief, and I can see that fast00, loopback 0, and virtual link are under area 0. So I type in this command under any of these. Because loopback 0 is not going to create a neighborship, it doesn't need this command, of course. I go to interface fast00, add this command here. I go to virtual link that I have, and this is under router process. So I go to router ospf 1, and if you show running config for section router ospf, you can see that I have virtual link definition here. And to add the message digest key, I add this to the end of the virtual link, definition. So I type in again area 13, and this is area 13, of course, because it's under area 0. I should have this here. Or maybe not. If you want to have this, you can add this. Oh, let's see the syntax here. It is words saying this. Area 13 virtual link 150 133, and now you can see that I have authentication, and I can have message digest, for example, for authentication here. And next, I can type in message digest key. And the message digest key is going to be key number 1, and it is going to be MD5 type, and it is Cisco, and I have this here. So I have message digest key enabled on this virtual link. I should do the same on the other side. So I go to router 3, enable configure terminal, and you can see that the ospf virtual link 0 is down in neighborship. So let's see the running config for section router ospf, and again go to router ospf 1 and change the area 13 virtual link 150.1.1.1. Authentication is gonna be message digest, and the message digest key is gonna be key number 1 that uses MD5, and the key is Cisco. And after a while, you should see that the neighborship is again there. So I added show running interface fast 00 here. I added this line of authentication key under fast Ethernet 00, and under router process I told that every interface under area 0 should have authentication enabled, and it should be in message digest form. So I go to router 2 and I do the same here. Here I type in this command here under interface, and as I told you previously, in Cisco routers the order of operations is not so important for most of the procedures. So I go to router ospf 1 and I add area 0 authentication message digest command here. Now every interface under area 0 should have message digest enabled. So let's see IP ospf interfaces in brief and see which interfaces need to have this. Loopback interfaces are going to create a neighborship, so I'm not going to add this command under that. Fast 00 is the only interface that has neighborship, so I added the message digest key under this interface. So you saw ospf authentication in 2 different types. Next, I'm going to talk about RIP and EIGRP authentication.